We are beautifully melanated.
Welcome to the Beautifully Melanated podcast. I am your host, Sarah, and I'm here with my two lovely co-hosts.
I'm Kay.
Hi, and I'm Karen. And today I'm going to introduce our What in the World topic, which is the NHS. The reason I'm bringing this up is because there's been a lot in the news recently about strikes for medical professionals. And also, I just want to throw it out there. Do you think we can sustain the NHS currently as it is? Or do you think the NHS should become privatised? So recently, my daughter attended a dentist appointment and they announced that they're going private. It's no longer going to be taking NHS patients. And so they've told me that she can stay on, but we'll have to pay, or we can find somewhere else. I was completely incensed. I went nuts. Because she's a child. And I just feel that we either have a system that works for everyone or we just scrap it and start again. You know, yes, I can find another dentist and I'm in the middle of doing that, but actually it's very, very difficult to find an NHS dentist. Lots of dentists are becoming privatized. So I thought, should we make the NHS means tested? Because actually it's free for everyone at the point of access. So initially, everyone can get NHS treatment. Can we sustain that, is my question? Or do you think we should make it means tested so that you have to be earning below a certain income threshold in order to access it? I mean, I've even heard of people who don't even live in this country. You know, some people live abroad, but they come back to get NHS treatment. And I think, okay, I get it. You know, perhaps you're UK born, whatever, but actually all of your taxes and all of your expenditures really are going somewhere else. That country's benefiting from, you know, your labour. But when you want NHS treatment, you come back. Now, I wouldn't normally have a problem with it, but now I have, because I'm thinking, actually, my daughter can't even go to the dentist and get free treatment, and I'm not happy. So, ladies, what do you think? The NHS, I know, just quickly to say that obviously in America, they have a completely different system. And I think it's actually made up of a few systems put together. There are several ways that they operate. So they do have Medicare where you can access some free treatment, but predominantly it is privatized. But they do it through insurance, I think. So you have a job, you pay into it, you pay into like a pot. Rather like how we sort of have private pensions. And then, you know, if anything happens, you need any medical care, that insurance then takes care of it. And then you can supplement, I think, pay on top. I don't really know much about their system, but might that be the way forward, looking at how things currently are in the UK? What do you think, ladies?
Well, I had this very conversation last night with a good friend. I don't know the history of the NHS, whether when it was set up, it had a remit or a limitation on what it was able to do. But the idea is everybody should be able to access healthcare. And it shouldn't be whether or not you can pay at the point at which you need it, right? Now, our taxes pay for it. This country taxes your very television watching. So I don't doubt for 1 minute they collect enough to fund the NHS and fund it properly. But no, what they want to do is form the fool with my tax money and then still expect me to pay private on top. So my position is this. If it's going to go private, and I already have private dental, Karen, for that reason, then don't tax me. Give me back my tax contributions. I will use that to pay private insurance. But you can't have it both ways. I'm not paying this level of tax on the dollar, on the pound, to then go and pay private again. I had that system in Jamaica where we had Blue Cross, it was at the time. You paid 80%, they paid 80% of your treatment, you pay 20%. I liked it because when I was having surgery, for instance, I chose my surgeon, I chose my anesthetist. You choose. I prefer that rather than a random who feels like it on the day, or is an overworked junior doctor done 90 hours and it can't be asked. So I don't mind paying, but I don't want to be paying and pay the level of tax we pay in this country. It's just not sustainable. And the danger is if you means test it, then we're going to pay more tax because we're earning. At which point I'll just give up. I would just frankly just give up and not work and go on the dole like everybody else, because there is no way I'm paying. I'm working as hard as I do, so some don't have to, so they can get free treatment and I don't. Means tested is wild. No.
It depends on what the threshold is.
Would you say that? But the threshold for anything is basic, and some people still don't work and still benefit. And those who go abroad and then come back for NHS treatment, they're usually retired. So they've already paid their taxes and done the slog here. Of course they come and use it. They paid for it.
I was referring to people who are not retired.
Okay. Either way, the amount of tax I pay here, I'm very resentful. It's January. Tax bills are due. I'm hugely resentful of how much tax I have to pay, while big corporations get away with not paying any tax at all. Not okay. So the politicians need to be honest. They are trying to privatize the NHS. We can all see what's happening. But they want to privatize it and still tax us at the level we're at. And that's where I draw the line. Stop being dishonest. I don't think it's going to work as it is now. It's not fit for purpose.
No, I think it's not sustainable, because I think
it's not.
Also, the things that we used to treat and the limitations that we had are not the case now. We are treating far more things to a greater extent, and therefore it can't sustain itself, can it?
But Karen, when surgeries go wrong in private hospitals where they take patients, NHS, there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
The specialism, the skill set, the resources are already there.
And also the same, the doctors who work privately also work for the NHS. It's not as if you're getting a, substandard doctor. It's the same.
It's the same doctor.
It's the same. And also the other thing I was just going to say before I ask Sarah to jump in is the fact that I think that the money is spent so inappropriately. I think it's not evenly distributed. I think sometimes the government will have a new initiative, right? And they'll plug millions into something. And the big bosses, as always, get their fat checks and they get their cut. Actually, the people on the ground are not getting that money. I think that there's a lot of wastage. I think that there's a lot of mismanagement. I think the whole thing needs a reform, because I think that's where a lot of money, like I say, is wasted.
Of course. Weren't too long ago they were clapping them on a Thursday night in the pandemic, and now they're persecuting the nurses and the doctors.
Exactly.
Sarah.
Yeah, so like Kay, I would pay not more on top of the current tax that we have to pay in this country, but I would, if there was a way to pay out of what I already pay for taxes and use a percentage of that, instead of paying my TV license, which I think is a load of old crap, then couldn't that be put aside for, like, I know it's not enough, but couldn't something be put aside?
Month. Your insurance might be £20 a month.
That's right, yeah.
£13 a month for TV to watch TV.
Exactly. So surely, isn't it more healthy for me to have that towards health insurance, no? And just watch Netflix. But they said, no, watching Netflix also requires TV license. Because I thought, but I don't watch live TV. And they said, but Netflix is also an Amazon Prime. So, for goodness sake. Anyway.
I thought it was just for the BBC. I thought it was
I checked that. So I cancelled mine. I had to reinstate it because I just thought what I don't need is someone sending me a letter through the post saying, you owe this much money. The same people that say, "Oh, keep your heating on all day on low. It'll be much less money." Are they going to come and pay my bills? It's like thousands upon thousands upon. I said, "Well, someone told me to keep it on low." Is that kind of person?
I do keep it on low all day, Sarah. I've not turned it off. It's on low
all day. That's what I've been doing.
Do you? I wouldn't dare. I'm too scared of that. But yeah. So yeah, that's that. So I would be willing to pay for it, yes. But out of the money I already do, give the HMRC soon to be, and out of my my PAYE job. So I've had experiences, really good experiences of the NHS when I had my daughter, amazing experience of that. I've had really shit, sorry to swear, experiences of the NHS. Mainly not so much the treatment, but like you said, it's overworked individuals that have seen far too many people and that are just cranky and uninterested at that point. Do I blame them? Not really, because I know how it is if you see too many people in one day and it's not productive. And then I've also had a situation where I've needed some private healthcare, but funnily enough, I went to an NHS doctor for something minor to do with my wrist years ago, and they actually referred me to a private hospital. And the treatment I got there I couldn't believe it. I've never been to a private hospital before. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. And then when I came out of it, I was like, wow, if I ever have an opportunity to go private, if I ever need to, I think I don't know if I'd afford to, but if I could afford to, I probably would do. I agree with what Kay says about means testing. That makes me nervous because I feel like, I don't earn loads of money, but I don't earn hardly any money. So I feel like they would get us, because it always is the way, isn't it? The super rich get away with it. Sorry, this is sounding awful, isn't it now? People that have people that are not working, let's leave it there, are always entitled to something.
Yeah.
And then there's people that kind of working class like us entitled to nothing.
I know.
So it's insane. So up here, Mr. Wealthy, he gets away with it. Mr. I've never worked a day in my life and I've got chronic health conditions, oh dear. And I'm depressed as well. Yes, and I'm obese and everything possible, and I can't cope. They get away with it. And then people that are trying to provide money for their families and stuff, but we're not earning loads of money, don't get away with it. So I'd worry if it was means tested, then it would be us that cops the flack again.
Yeah.
So
it's the
I'm
people
not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure, Karen. I think it is going to become private in the end. Definitely. And I do worry that actually I have a horrible feeling that it will be more tax again on top of what we're already paying.
So if it is private, then surely you choose your healthcare provider exclusive of the government.
Is that how it works? But when I had that only one experience at private hospital, they chose me to private hospital and they contacted me. But I don't know.
No. What I meant was like people who already have private health, like with Ben and Den or Bupa.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Or Spire and all of that. Yeah, they choose their provider. It's nothing to do with the government. They go with that provider, pay a monthly fee, and then when they need help, then when they need medical attention, they just call up and get it. Even for therapy, some clients are funded through their insurance.
That's true. Yes. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I imagine the government would probably not interfere, but you're right. They might find a way to tax us for that.
You know what we do? We couldn't just not pay it. So I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the healthcare I did receive privately was amazing. But then again, when I had my daughter, that same care I received, I feel could have been private because the midwives were so attentive and they were really good and they really were supportive and they were there the whole time. So
I think the thing is, though, I think you're right. You can have a fantastic experience either way. But I think what's happening now is that people are on waiting lists, really long waiting lists. There are enough beds. There's a real backlog now. And that's what's happening. So perhaps the care that you once received, it's questionable whether you would receive that now in the current
I think I'd need to know, there's also like, is it affordable? I don't know. I'd need to know how affordable are we talking about? Are we talking about something that would take someone I don't know with earning what we're earning a month to save for, 2 months to save for? we talking something that you probably could do in a month if you would needed to at a push, or as a one-off? Because I don't know roughly how much private healthcare costs if it's not, like a big operation is going to cost lots of money. But say, for instance, like I had an issue with my wrist in the past, how much would that have cost to get sorted out? I don't know. I have no idea, ladies. So I need to know more.
If you wanted to deep dive, the private health companies have the prices.
Okay.
Some of them have their prices up on their website, and yes, eye-watering. But then your insurance would pay 80% of that, and you would pay 20%. Well, that's, like I said, Blue Cross as it was in Jamaica when I was there. That's what it was, and it still is. We have the basic where you can go to the hospital and get treatment, but it's 50-50 whether you live or die, quite frankly. Or you go private because the provision from the government is so basic. And they do their best, but again, overworked, underpaid.
Yes.
My worry is with Brexit, that very racist anti-immigration vote, a lot of talent left the UK from the medical profession.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah. And they were forced out. Visas were revoked. They were penalized for being immigrants. And now they don't have enough of any category of healthcare professionals now.
Absolutely. Yep.
It's true. Weren't they asked to come back in again? Weren't they forced out and asked to come back in and to drive lorries?
You know what? That wouldn't surprise me.
I'm sure they were. I'm sure to drive lorries. They said you can't come in for long. They said, and listeners have to correct me. They said we'll give you a temporary visa just to sort this lorry issue out.
They did it for the fruit pickers as well.
Operation Brock.
They did it for the fruit pickers as well. They flew them in privately after deporting them.
That's it. So get out, then come back in again. Because
let me use you and then go again.
Yeah, it's disgusting, isn't it? And they're also on a big sort of recruitment campaign again with nurses because they are struggling.
And where are they recruiting from, Karen?
Is it the Caribbean, I've heard?
And Africa and Asia. Countries, as if we don't get sick in our own countries. They're recruiting teachers there as well. So basically, we want to be the privilege to be racist and anti-immigration. And then when we need you, you must come.
That's right.
And then when we're done with you,
leave again.
You must go.
Yeah. It's just crazy.
The NHS could be crazy. I worry for it. I think private healthcare, if I had the money, if I was wealthy, I wouldn't even use the NHS unless I had to. I would go privately. I just would. But I'm not.
Yes. Anyway, ladies, I shall hand over to Sarah to introduce this week's topic.
Okay, guys. Well, this week's topic is carrying on what we were speaking about last week about child mental health and child development, etc. So this week, I am going to touch on attachment. I'm going to speak about my experience. I have two different attachment styles with my parents. I'm going to share a little bit about my background. I have shared in a previous podcast in relation to attachment. My experience with these two different attachment patterns, really, and how they've kind of played out in my life. And then I'm going to ask the ladies to speak about their attachment patterns and how they're reflected in their own lives. But first, before I kind of jump into speaking a little bit about my life and my experiences as an adopted adult in relation to attachment, I'm going to ask Kay just quickly to jump in, so the listeners are having some kind of a standing, if you don't know already, about what attachment is and the different attachment styles. So Kay, can you please enlighten us?
Yeah, happy to. Now, bear with, because it can be wordy, but I'm going to keep it really simple. So we're talking about attachment style, which is the quality of your attachment to your caregiver when you were first born. And that can either be secure or insecure. So your style is either secure or insecure. Attachment behavior is the behavior that results in us wanting to either get close or stay close to our loved ones or parents or caregivers. So that can be triggered by separation or threatened separation from said attachment figure. In this case, let's say our parents. I'm going with Bowlby's theory of attachment. So this was in the 1960s when he said there are 4 distinguishing characteristics of attachment. The first one, it's a desire to be near the people we are attached to. We would like a safe haven. That is, we return to our attachment figure for comfort and safety when we're frightened or scared. And the parent or caregiver will act as a secure base from which the child can explore the world and then come back. And that there is distress, separation distress, and anxiety when the attachment figure is not around. So there are 3 subtypes of insecure. So there's only one secure attachment, which is secure. And then there are 3 insecure attachment styles. The first one is avoidance, ambivalence, and then there is insecure. So only one of those has a link to pathology, and that's the disorganized attachment style. So let me give you some examples. A securely attached child will have an internalized parent who is loving, reliable, and they will believe they're worthy of love and attention because that's how they were responded to by their caregivers. So linking to last week on brain development and play, if your parents are attuned and attached to you, that's a secure attachment. Okay, so children who are securely attached, they generally will become upset when their caregivers leave and then happy when they return. When they're frightened, they will go to that caregiver or parent for comfort, and they will accept it readily from their parents or caregivers. And while these children might be comforted to some extent by other people like aunts, grandparents, it is usually that they prefer their caregiver or their parents to strangers or other people. Parents of securely attached children tend to play more with their children, and they react more quickly to their children's needs. Generally, they're more responsive. So as children, just to sum up secure attachment, as children, you separate easily from your parent, but you come back to them as easily. You seek comfort from them when you're frightened. And there are positive emotions when you greet your caregiver. Say at the end of the day, you pick them up from nursery and they're excited to see you and jump in your arms. And they prefer their parents to strangers. As adults, these securely attached children then have trusting and lasting relationships. They tend to have good self-esteem. They can share their feelings with their partners and their friends, and they tend to seek out social support. So that's a secure attachment style. An insecure attachment style, any of the subcategories, an insecurely attached child may view the world as a dangerous place in which other people are to be treated with great caution, and they may see themselves as unworthy of love. So let's start with ambivalent attachment. Children who are ambivalently attached tend to be extremely suspicious of strangers. These children display considerable distress when they're separated from their parent or caregiver, but they do not seem reassured or comforted when the caregiver returns. In some case, the child might passively reject the parent by refusing comfort. So mom might say, give me a hug, and they'll turn away, or openly display aggression towards the parent. Teachers often describe them as clingy and over-dependent. I don't know, Karen, if you've seen that in your classroom when you used to teach. But lots. Yeah. As children, they're wary of strangers. The ambivalent attachment style, the tagline I use is, I hate you, don't leave me. So there's a push-pull there. I don't want you, but don't leave. I need you.
Lots of adults like that, Kay. Lots of adults I've met like that in their relationships.
Yes.
Loads of teenagers.
Especially like in adult relationships. Yeah. I hate you, don't leave me. So children who are ambivalently attached might be wary of strangers. They become greatly distressed when their parents leave, but they do not appear to be comforted when their parents return. As adults, they are reluctant to become close to others. They worry that their partner doesn't love them. That's what you're saying, Sarah. And they become very distraught when relationships end. So that's the first subcategory of insecure attachment. So the next one is avoidant attachment. So as it says, Children with avoidant attachment styles tend to avoid their parents or their caregivers, and it often becomes pronounced after a period of absence. These children might not reject attention from a parent, but neither do they seek it out. And they don't seek comfort from them either. Children with avoidant attachment show no preference between a stranger and their parent. And as children, that's exactly it. They avoid their parents, don't seek much contact or comfort from them, but they don't have a preference one way or another if it's mom or a stranger or a dad or a stranger. As adults, they may have problems with intimacy. They may invest little emotion in social and romantic relationships and are unwilling or unable to share their thoughts or feelings with others. And the final subcategory of an insecure attachment style is the one associated with pathology, is the disorganized attachment style. And this attachment style is one in which there's a lack of clear attachment behavior. You know, as we were saying earlier, where you look for your parent and you're assured if you see them and you're securely attached. With a disorganized attachment style, there is no attachment behavior. Their actions and responses to their caregivers are a mix of behaviors, including avoidance or resistance. These children are described as displaying dazed behavior, sometimes seeming either confused or apprehensive in the presence of a caregiver. Parents who act as figures of both fear and reassurance to a child contribute to a disorganized attachment style, because the child feels both comforted and frightened by the parents. Confusion results. That's why the style is disorganized. So, for instance, at age 1, a child with a disorganized attachment style will show a mixture of avoidant and resistant behavior. They may seem confused, dazed, or apprehensive. At age 6, they may take on a parental role. So some children may act as a caregiver to their parent. And when in adulthood, they will struggle to form an attachment to any partner or even their own children. They would have to really work on it. But in all 3 cases of insecure attachment, there are feelings of anger at the rejection, a fear of abandonment, and it deprives the child of the opportunity to process emotional experiences. Now, the important thing to remember with attachment is this. It is not static. It can be fluid. So you might have had a insecure attachment to your caregiver, but that doesn't mean you're always going to have insecure attachments throughout your lifetime. If you were to say, be romantically involved with someone who's securely attached, or you have therapy, I prefer therapy, then you can learn to become or trust someone else to be a secure attachment figure. It's not outgrown per se, but it can be transformed. So you never outgrow it, but you can transform it. But when you're stressed or distressed, you will probably revert to your original attachment style. Now, here's the key bit. Parenthood reawakens a person's own attachment history. While adult romantic attachments may not exactly correspond with early childhood attachments, there is no question that our earliest relationships with our caregivers play a role in development. And when you become a parent, it is activated. So you see how easy it is for patterns to repeat unconsciously. So there it is in a nutshell. I hope it wasn't too wordy, but by understanding how you attach to others, it can really shift your relationships with your children and your partner. So Sarah, I'm going to hand back over to you.
Thank you, Kay. That was very, very comprehensive. And I think it's quite clear now about what attachment patterns what. So, guys, I wanted to use myself as this case study. Myself and the ladies were thinking about confidentiality the other day. And I think what's will be useful here, that I can just talk about my own life and there's no worry about anybody else's life here. and use myself here as a case study. So when I was about 1.5, I was adopted. So I've explained a little bit about this before, but my birth mother was a very, very young teen mum. And it was the early 80s, and she was struggling, and she was homeless, living in a hostel, and she had me. And I was put up for adoption, and I was put into a kind of foster home place. And I was adopted when I was about 1.5 is when my parents now adopted me. Yeah. So I don't really have any memories of anything in my life before the age of about 6. Not sure whether that was because I tried to block that part of my life out, probably a little bit. My birth mother has told me about her, even her short time with me, which was highly traumatic and pretty horrific, to be honest with you. So I've definitely blocked out feelings. I mean, we know that, babies do pick up feelings from mum in the womb. And also when babies, even, I would have had some kind of effect. It would have had some kind of effect on me, my life with my birth mum, my life in the foster home. I was also spending a lot of time in this commune as well. My birth mum lived, which actually came up on a documentary on the news a few years ago. It's kind of weird, but yeah, I lived in a commune as well for a short time. It was all very kind of messy. But anyway, so I was adopted, and by these middle class parents of mine. And I moved down from the north of England down to Hampshire. So I had quite a nice childhood, I'd say. And it's only really when I got older, maybe when I was studying to become a counsellor, but definitely when I became a mother of my daughter, did I realise, how dramatically different my attachment is with my daughter, who's quite securely attached, and my attachment pattern with my mother. So when I was a child, there was quite a difference between the way I felt about being around my mother versus being around my father. So when I think of my mother and I think about my attachment style to my mother, I think it is definitely an avoidant attachment style. So I would always keep my distance from my mother. I did not accept any form of affection, really, from my mother. If she would try and hug me and stuff like that, I would push her away. I mean, obviously, there were times when I wouldn't, times when I would let her hug me, but I remember feeling so uncomfortable. I just wanted to scream,
Is this your adopted mum, Sarah?
My adopted mother, yes. Yeah.
Right.
And it actually continued, Kay, when I was older. I had a real issue with older women, a massive, massive, massive issue with older women. I think my birth mother as well. I remember when she met me for the first time when I was an adult, one of the things she said is to the social worker at the time, "Is it okay if I hug her?" And I said, "No, absolutely not to touch me."
Oh, wow. Oh,
so
wow.
even then,
yeah.
So it's a mother thing. And I think it's since having my daughter and how we're so close and hugs and kisses and cuddles, and it's so natural. And it got me thinking, gah, this is nothing like my mother. So when you were talking, Kay, about, a securely attached child seeking support and help whilst frightened, I never did that, my mother. I don't ever remember seeking support from her whilst frightened.
Sorry to butt in.
Go on.
How old was your adopted mum when she adopted you?
How old did you say she was?
Yeah.
She was, I think, about 32.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wondered, when you said you had some issues with older women, is that what you said?
Yes, as I got older myself, yes. Okay. I had issues with older women. I did up until I think probably about when I went to uni, Karen, to be honest with you. I've done a lot of work. I had one point, I sat just, all cards on the table, listeners. and everybody, I could not stand women. I absolutely could not stand women. I just liked the company of men. I just thought they were no BS, and I just hated women. And as I've got older, I've just loved my girlfriends and women. It's gone the other way around because I've done the work. I love the sisterhood. Right. I love women, but the younger me hated women with a passion.
Did your adopted mum have lots of female friends herself? Did you sort of grow up in a household where she'd have friends over and she was kind of quite social with other females? Was she that way?
Her friends were always couples. They were always couples that were friends with both my mum and my dad, Karen. So where it wouldn't be like we'd go around houses to see other women friends. I don't know if that's just of the era, of the time, possibly. A married couple of their age back in the early 80s tended to socialise with another married couple.
Yeah, sure.
Whereas now we'd more likely we'd just go around a girlfriend's house. But I don't think it was really like that so much then. Maybe it was just me, but I always experienced couples coming round for dinner or something. It wasn't really just my mum and her friends.
Sure.
Yeah. In fact, I don't think I remember any of that ever happening, my mum and her friends. Really? Strange, isn't it? So, yeah. So
I'm just wondering if that possibly played a part because of what you saw, I guess, because sometimes we learn behaviour, don't we? So if
we learn it,
our friends, yeah.
But it wasn't that, trust me. It wasn't that, because I had an absolute loathing for women. Absolute. Okay. I literally could have just lived with men. I just hated it. Hated women because I thought that I didn't trust them. That was the other. I didn't trust them.
Is that all women? I'm asking only in the context is yours is a transracial adoption.
Yeah, that's right.
So did that include Black women? All women? White women?
I just felt all women that were older than me.
Right.
The women of my age were okay because I had friends up, but the women that were older, and not even 5 years old, that's cool. I'm talking like 10 years older than me. That could have been my mother. I hated them. I didn't trust them. And I found them suspicious and not to be trusted.
Understandably. Understandably. If we look back at the attachment theory, yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Why, yes, because the original attachment rupture with your mum would have left you in a place of not having that caregiver, that secure caregiver. And I've worked with children in foster care, so I know that having a good foster carer doesn't mean your attachment changes. It just means they're your foster carer. But the attachment broken from your birth family, very painful, very
hard,
painful.
So difficult. And even now, and you know how in times of stress, and I found as I've got older, and I will listen to a minute touch on my attachment pattern. My dad, it's totally different. I have to work very hard on having a consistent relationship with my mother because I can become so avoidant. I could just disappear. It sounds really harsh, but I find it very hard to feel. That's it. I find it very hard to feel. I would like to not speak and to remove myself from that relationship, actually, sometimes. But then I think, oh God, but I know it's my attachment pattern. I just really struggle with it. My attachment pattern would like me to not speak at all to my mother, I think. I think that's what it would. And then I'd be like, breathe. Yeah. But at the same time, it's not just, as mothers get older, mothers can become more challenging, but I've understood it's not just that. I've always been quite avoidant with my mother, but as I've got older and when I'm tired, I don't want to know at all. And I can go weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. I could go without saying anything. The other day, actually, I called up my dad because my relationship and my attachment pattern with my dad is very different. And my mum actually answered the phone. I said, can I speak to my dad? And she said, why? I said, I just want to speak to my dad. And so she said, okay. And I found out later she was really upset about it. So I had to call her back and speak to her. But I just naturally just wanted to speak to my dad. couldn't, because when I speak to him, I don't feel this excruciating pressure. Yeah, so that's my mum, and I do struggle with it, but I think it's important to be aware of your attachment patterns, so you don't just think, okay, I'm struggling with this person because they might irritate me on some level. There's that, but when there's like, it feels like someone would have to come behind me and force me to physically speak to my mother sometimes, because I feel like I'm just faking it. It's weird. It just feels like I'm faking interest.
That's because the attachment isn't there.
No,
And
I
it never
struggled.
was.
My whole life I've struggled, Kay. God help. Hope she's not listening to this. But that'll be it.
Might make a lot of sense to her, actually.
Yeah. My whole life I've struggled. I've struggled so hard. And I think as I've become a mother, it's excruciatingly hard, actually.
Do you feel as if you've never bonded with her? Like you never...
Yeah, that's right.
There was just not an opportunity for you to bond, as well as perhaps might that be coupled with her personality on top of it?
As she's got older, and I've spoken to a lot of people now who have mothers of a similar age or older, and a lot of them have said they have become incredibly bitter older ladies, which is very sad, actually, but they have been. And so there's that, Karen. There's that. And the fact also, yes, the fact that she is... there was opportunity for us to bond, but I didn't feel... I don't know. I just couldn't bond with her. I don't know how else to describe it to you.
But that wouldn't be your fault because you were 18 months. We were 1.5. So at that age, if you link it to brain development, that isn't something conscious. That's more of a felt level response to her almost immediately.
Yeah, I couldn't. It wasn't choose to. I couldn't. It's not like, you said there was no opportunity to, Karen. There was loads of opportunity to. She was quite a wealthy woman. She wasn't rushing. I mean, she was working part-time, but she didn't have to rush back to work like, we all did and stuff like that. So there's loads of opportunities with me a lot, but I just don't feel that way about her. I just can't. I've tried over the years, tried really hard, and I look at people. Got a very good friend, and she's so close to her mum, and I look at her, I think, I could never be like that with my mum. I don't feel that way.
Interestingly, there was a program, wasn't there, that I suggested that you watch, Sarah. I can't remember what it's called now. BBC, I think it was. And it was about people who'd been adopted.
That's right. It was a guy, wasn't it? A guy that was talking about it. Yes, I did watch it. That's right. He'd been adopted by an Essex family, hadn't he?
That was right.
White family, yes.
Yes. And I guess the reason I'm bringing that up is because this particular man was raised by a white family, and he also mentioned that he really struggled to kind of, although they were lovely,
That's right, remember.
He cared for him, all that sort of stuff. He just couldn't see himself in that family. So I guess he struggled with identity in that sense. And I guess, what I've got as a given is that I look like my mum, and I guess, there are certain personality traits and I guess those things that I take for granted, you didn't have,
That's right, I didn't have. I honestly, and my mother, let's just hope, isn't listening to this, and I'll do everything for her not to listen to this, because this statement's pretty cold. But spending time around my partner's stepmom, to me, is more nourishing than spending time around my own mum. So what does that tell you? I met my partner's stepmom 3 times.
Maybe a cultural fit?
Possibly. I just feel more comfortable. I don't feel forced to feel,
But I'm hearing that on a soul level. And I'll tell you why I say that. Again, I'm going back to 18-month-old you with the attachment rupture you had with your birth mother. And then you were in foster care. So that's another person standing in for mum. And then eventually being adopted by a mum who doesn't look like you and doesn't reflect where you're coming from. Our souls know where we're safe. We don't have to guess. If you feel more nourished around a Black woman, might that be a connection that more links to who you are?
Definitely. I just feel, it's the same thing about Christmas, really. I feel so nourished around my partner's family more than my own. And that's why I've always craved that family, I think. So that's my mum. It's stressful. People say to me, "Oh yes, but when she passes, you'll be so devastated, aren't it? It's gonna be so difficult for you." I said, "I love my mum because I feel I should love my." She's not a bad person. You know, she does love me. Does, but I just can't be forced to feel. That's all there is to it. I cannot. It's like all I can think is example of asking me to have a same-sex relationship when I'm not, into women. It's example of, a gay person telling them to be straight. Huh? It's an example of a trans person and you're telling them not to be. Like, that's all I can say. It's just, you just cannot. So
if in life the attachment isn't there, the attachment bond isn't there, the suggestion that it will come in death.
That's right.
Very
I had a friend say,
unlikely.
"You're going to be absolutely devastated." I said, "I
No, you
actually
won't.
don't think I will be, though."
But why
I'm
would you
sorry.
be? It's the attachment that's broken that causes us to grieve. But the attachment wasn't there.
That's right. My dad, however, I'll be absolutely blooming in bits.
There you go.
For him.
There you go.
Like
and I
my
don't think
dad.
that's exclusive to you, Sarah. There's some children with their own birth mothers who feel that way. That I won't miss you when you die.
I think
because attachment.
Exactly. I think it's weird because you think about that. I think as you get older, don't you? Think about your own parents passing. I mean, I care for my mother. I do, but I'm 41 now. She's in her early 80s. I can't see how it will change now. I just can't. I do try. I still try, and I think I try and fake it for her sometimes, but I still don't feel.
You can't help loving who you love, and you can't make yourself love someone who you don't. And not that you don't love your mum. I know that you love your mum.
I love her, like you said, in different ways, but there's different types of, like love. There's different depths of love, and
yes, I get that. Yeah, totally. And you can't force that.
I've tried so hard, Karen. I've tried so hard. And recently I just sat down and thought I was going to let it go and just do the best I can for the length of time I have with my mum. Because me driving myself mad isn't really going to help anyone. As long as I'm acting in a caring manner, I check in on my mum. I grit my teeth and I listen to her. But I can't force something that's just not there.
Yeah, I do understand
that. So my dad, that is secure attachment. My dad is great. Honestly, my dad, I can go to him. I trust him. I trust in my daughter's life. I trust in my life. In times of stress, I have definitely gone to him. My God, he has been 100% accepting of who I am as a person. I have done some crazy and wild things that I am not going to share on this podcast because so a step too far. But he has literally been my rock. My absolute rock when I got up to some stuff. He has been just great. And I think my dad also, I always felt like my dad has my back. I don't really feel there's much that I could not tell him anymore. He's very open-minded. It's just a totally different relationship. When I think about my dad, I really love my dad. I really do love my dad. He's easy to talk to. I'd call him up at 1 o'clock in the morning saying, "Dad, shit, this has happened." And he would hear me. He'd say, "Where do you want me to pick you up from?" Even at 41. So, yeah. And when my dad went through a difficult, he was in hospital recently having a heart triple heart bypass. And when I picked him up, he was so frail. And I just thought, again, I was thinking about, mortality. And I was thinking, God, when I do lose my dad, it's going to really affect me. I do love my dad. And I was thinking about the difference between my secure attachment pattern with my dad and my avoidant attachment pattern with my mum. I was thinking about my daughter and our secure attachment pattern. I don't know. I just think it's such a difference. And I'm wondering why it is. And I'm thinking it probably is because of my birth mum. I'm so much more comfortable with my dad. I don't know. But yeah, I'm definitely securely attached to my dad. I trust him. But I think also I do have an issue as well with trust. And that's not just, I don't know, across the board pretty much. I don't really trust. Who do I trust? Fully 100%. I trust my dad fully 100%. That's it. That's it. So I'm afraid, people.
Do you trust yourself 100%?
Yes, definitely.
So that's definitely. 2 people.
Yes, 2 people. 2 people. So I wanted to come to both Kay and Karen and ask them about what they feel their attachment patterns are to their parents and how that's affected their life and their relationships. So will one of you want to jump in and just talk about your attachment pattern, please? That'd be great.
Okay,
Karen.
so I would say that I have strong attachments to both my parents. I'll start with my mum. So definitely with my mum, she and I, as I've got older, I find myself turning into my mum. Like I say things like her. I start to chew my food like her. Like it's getting serious now. And she was that caregiver that I would go to. I remember my first day at nursery and what she brought me when she picked me up. I remember I have really, really happy, vivid memories of my childhood with my mum. My mum's my hero. And I think with my first daughter, we have, I think I've repeated that pattern. I think that she and I kind of replicate what I had with my mum. So yes, I can see definitely how patterns re-emerge. With my dad, I would still say it was secure, but I was just not as close to him. So I didn't recognize any of the others, if I'm honest. I think I would have to say secure. That's the most similar to what you described. Just not as close. I guess that was personality, though. I think just the way that he was less nurturing. He was more quite traditional in his approach and his sort of views on parenting and discipline and all that sort of stuff. So would I go to him if I'd hurt my finger? Probably not. I'd go to my mum, you know what I mean, for that sort of comfort. But to be fair, I would say both secure. Yeah, my dad was a hunter-gatherer, that type of guy. And yeah, I felt secure. I felt safe with my parents. With my second daughter, I feel that because, like I think I said this last week, my situation, home life, changed a lot when I had my second child. And I think I wasn't as present in her sort of formative years as I was with my other daughter. I was working a lot. She had to go back to nursery, lots of sort of external factors. And so it'd be interesting if she had to answer this question, whether she feels secure or not. And that would be interesting. I don't know if I'd be ready
very
to
interesting.
Yeah, but it would be. But there are already things that, because she and I talk a lot. She's very, bless her, she's very mature. And we do talk about how she feels. And she mentioned the fact that I worked a lot. And she says, Mum, because you worked so much, I have more memories of my dad than I do you. Like, Dad was the one who took me to school, and she said, I appreciate that you were working and he was a stay-at-home dad, and I understand that, but I just don't remember you being there. That was heartbreaking. It was so hard to hear.
Oh, that's rough to hear, Karen. Oh my gosh.
Hard. That was really hard to hear.
It is.
And I did, it's not for the want of trying.
Of course.
I love my children, but it kind of brings me back to what you were saying last week, I think, Kay, about, we make choices about what we want to do. And I've always worked in schools. I've worked in education because I could work term time and have holidays off to my children. And I've, tried to work around them and school. And even so, that's how my daughter feels, that she doesn't have really strong memories. And I wonder if we did bond as much. Perhaps not. Well, yeah, maybe not as much as I was able to with my first daughter. So anyway, what I'm saying is, I didn't know what she'd say if you asked her, But and I can see how patterns, whether positive or negative, can repeat themselves, because I guess depending on your experience, that might then sort of, impact on the way that you parent, etc., etc. Anyway, so yes, I would say I had very strong attachments to both my parents. I would like to think I also have strong attachments to my children. But yeah, different experiences with my first and my second. What about you, Kay?
Yeah, I've had years and years and years and years of therapy, so I do know my attachment style is ambivalent, and it remains so. It's more to do with inconsistent parenting than anything else. So to my mother, I was more attached, but yeah, during periods of distress and what's going on in her life, yeah, she was distracted. So yeah, I kind of learned not to. In fact, ambivalence in the definition of ambivalence, yeah, I could take her or leave her at points, because I became really self-sufficient and probably over-dependent, and I completely avoidantly attached to my father for most of my life. Interestingly, since COVID, I would say I'm less attached to my mum and more attached to my dad. So I'm getting to know him in a different way. They parented the way they were parented, which was, it was odd because you were seen and not heard. The only way I can describe it, it's like you belong to them, but you don't have a relationship with them because they're the adult, you're the child. You do as you're told. You don't mess up. You go to parts they choose for you, but it wasn't relational. It was very, very much authoritarian. This is the way it's going to go. That doesn't foster a relationship. So I don't trust people. In fact, I almost always start from a starting point of I don't trust people. It's the ambivalent part of me that says, they're going to let you down. Why bother? And so, yeah, I don't envisage it changing, but I will say it's come to bear in romantic relationships and made it really, really difficult, because being ambivalently attached, I have been drawn to avoidantly attached men. That was it was a lose-lose situation, because the push-pull that comes with I hate you, don't leave me, they're avoidant anyway. So you're not going anywhere. So I would say in romantic relationships, it's made it really difficult, to the point that I'm at the point where I think maybe about it. A conventional relationship is not something I would do now anymore. It just won't work for me. Very securely attached to my daughter and she to me. Ambivalently attached to my son. Patterns repeating. He followed a stillborn baby. And I had postnatal depression when I had him. And I wouldn't get it treated because God. I was written prescription for antidepressants and I wouldn't take them. Because, I went to church and people was like, just pray. And it's the worst thing I could have done for him. Because it meant that interfered with our attachment.
Sure.
And the ability to attach him. And then my fear was he was going to die just like his sister before him. So then I didn't want to get attached to him because I couldn't imagine burying another child. It was so complex. At the time, what I needed was therapy. But it didn't happen. And so that repeated. Our attachment is ambivalent. I'm not in the same place with him, but he's working through that with me. So he will do the push-pull. And when he pulls away, it's like walking around with my heart out on my sleeve. It's so bloody painful. But I stay still because I know he'll come back and find me where he left me.
Yeah.
It's hard, but he's now beginning to feel a little bit more securely attached, but it's taken so many years. And like I said, it like I read earlier, it transforms, but it doesn't fully go away. So when he's stressed, I won't hear from him. And he won't answer his phone.
You've just made a really interesting point, though, and a good point. You said that you'll stay still because you know that when he's ready, he will come back to you.
Yeah,
I think that's a really, really important message for other people who might be experiencing something similar. Just knowing that your consistent sort of behavior or your consistent parenting now, he knows that you're not going anywhere. You're there.
Yeah. But when we used to lock horns, it's because when he pulled away, I would chase him. And it made him pull away even more.
Okay. Yeah, that's a lesson learned with people in general, isn't it? Chase anyone because they just. I remember as a teenager chasing boys like, oh, I thought he liked me and all that rubbish. Yeah. It's like, why isn't he talking to me? Yeah. Because you're chasing. That's why. So yeah.
And because I said to him, but I love you. I will chase you to the ends of the earth. I might. That was just terrifying to me.
Oh wow! No. It is scary though. It is scary though, okay. It's like I had a therapist a while back. I remember I didn't end up going with her, but she ended up saying to me after like 2 emails, she said to me, "I'm never going to give up on you." You know, I thought, I don't even know you. You're scaring me. Like it just makes me. It just scares me. So yeah, I hear that.
Exactly. Exactly. I had to learn that when he pulled away, he needed to pull away. That's the difference. He needed to. And chasing him to the 7 bowels of the earth was just absolutely terrifying. So yeah, I've learned. And it's nice that when he comes back, I get big hugs. And it's like time hasn't passed.
Does he know, Kay? Does he know about attachment?
Yeah, he does.
Does he realise his own pattern?
He does, and it helped him to understand why we fought so much.
That's good.
And why, when I tried to get closer, it was overwhelming, and he needed to pull away. So yeah, he's very aware of it. And even when he pulls away, or when he's stressed, I know when he's stressed without him having to say a word, because he won't text back, and if I call, he won't answer. And I'm like, you're having a rough time. I'm here.
Yeah.
What's interesting though is I think that as parents, we find that so hard. We just want them to come close. We want to pull them in. We want them to be happy. We don't want them to feel any discomfort or sadness. Yeah. But actually, that is all part of life. And sometimes we have to allow our children to feel.
That's right.
And to be upset and to experience whatever it is and to work through whatever it is they need to work through. And it's so difficult to watch them do that. We just want everything to go away and for it to be... fluffy clouds.
Yeah. And the hardest part, we have to allow them to reject us.
Yeah, that's hard.
For them to survive. Because for them to survival, isn't it? Imagine a young baby, I don't know, tiger or something that could never let go of the mother. It's just in the end, the young tiger will get eaten. It wouldn't survive. It would all wither and die, one of the two.
Yeah. And that's what I find so confusing in this sense about Caribbean culture. I can only speak of Caribbean culture, is that you are raised without attachment in mind. It's not that they don't love you. You know you're loved by what they do, but it's, like I said, it's not relational. And then when like Sarah mentioned earlier, when your parents become elderly and you are expected to care for them with extreme care and love and affection that you actually didn't get. But it is expected. You know, you must sacrifice every dollar. You must make sure they're comfortable. You must meet all their needs. It's odd. There's a dissonance there because it doesn't reflect the early relationship.
But I think, like you say, it's an expectation, isn't it? I think that, like you say, they were raised the way they raised you, rather the way that they were raised. So if you think about slavery, for example, and what that would have looked like, the slave owner would unleash all these atrocities on the slave, and yet they still had to, give and give and give. You know what I mean? Give of themselves. So I think that's hugely impactful on the way that people in the Caribbean still raise their children. But also, there's just this. like you say, this expectance that even though they weren't nurtured in the way that you might see in this country, the expectation is that they will look after their parents, because it's just a given, isn't it? But but we have education now. We are sort of enlightened, aren't we? And we bring to our parenting what we know. We are healthcare professionals. They don't have that necessarily. Not everybody has access to that. So I guess maybe some work needs to be done there. Do you not think?
But then I wasn't in this role when I was raising my children. I started counseling training when my daughter was 2, I think. So I didn't always have this knowledge and insights.
No, but you're educated. You're an educated
Exactly.
woman.
But what I went by was the look on my child's face when I went to hit him and saw how frightened he was, and I never did it again. I was like, no, I cannot be the fear object. As I said, that's what links to disorganized attachment. When your parent is frightening you, but also the person you want to go to for comfort is the person who's frightening you.
All right. And what I'm saying is I completely, totally agree with you. What I'm saying is when I've worked with parents who have used physical chastisement with their children, physical punishment, whatever you want to call it, a lot of the time they know they want their child to do X, Y, and Z.
Right.
The child might refuse to cooperate. They might not follow instructions. Often the parent knows what they want, doesn't know how to get the child to do what they're asking for. I do a lot of work with parents on that, because what is a given to you and myself is not a given to them. So often, sometimes it's to do with lack of nurture, but often in terms of discipline, for example, they don't know how to use other strategies. They don't know how to get the desired response that they want. You see what I mean? So they will use force
and fear.
And what I'm saying, I just think that's why
they do what was done to them, Karen. They do what was done to them.
Yeah, and also, examples of what they see. You want a child to, I don't know, say, for example, I work with families who, say, for example, they want their child to do well in school, right? So academics is really, really important. This parent might, I don't know, they'll do Kumon in the morning and then tuition after school and all these extra things. Now, I can see this child is just screaming out and saying, I can't cope, I can't, this is too much. Parent doesn't see that. No, right. You're on your phone too much. It's this, it's that. They just can't see. Now, rightly or wrongly, they need guidance. Do you know what I mean? Like you'd think, would they not kind of look at their child's face or see how their child's responding and know to switch it up?
They do need guidance, because otherwise you're, I guess the way I am with my mother. Can you imagine if I was like that with my father too? And that was it. There's nothing, So I was just thinking, I think we all need at least one secure attachment in our lives.
And I had otherwise, my elder sister, she was my secure attachment figure. And that's why I've been able to securely attach to my children, but particularly my daughter when she was born, because my sister was my secure attachment figure. And when she died, it was like my mum died.
Oh, gosh.
I can hear that. Yeah.
It's just so difficult, because I think a lot of, people in life I've come across are just disorganized from 3 or 4 years old. So it's kind of like, God, it's heartbreaking. It really is. And it's so hard. When I was talking about my mum, it's so hard to imagine how to become securely attached to her. It's an impossibility. So,
but it's 2 ways. She would need to also be a secure attachment figure for you to attach to.
The work she'd have to do. Yes, I don't know. But then she has to do huge amounts of work, Kay. And there's just not, the trust isn't there. It's just not there. And it's weird talking about it, because it's not like I made a choice. And I'm thinking, if this is me as an adult, how about people we've come across in life that are disorganized in general, across the board, or avoidant in general? We've all come across them, and like you said, Kay, that, avoidant men and stuff. I mean, I know I used to love avoidant men, terrible. That's a
because that's where
disaster
we
zone.
felt secure.
Yeah, I think
They
it's
wouldn't challenge our attachment.
yeah, I was just desperately trying to make avoidant people unavoidant. Just trying
Yeah.
so hard.
Yeah. If you remember last week when I said the first 1001 days of a child's life is critical for brain development, but it is also the same for attachment. And if you think about what was happening in your first 1001 days, Sarah, you had a massive attachment rupture,
Massive.
and then probably 2 more along the way.
But also in utero as well, Kay. In utero, I was, in a hostel. My mum was in a hospital. She said people were like doing heroin. She had to share a room with someone that, was unsavory. So, yeah, and she was heavily pregnant with me, and she was, what was she at that time? Just turned 17. So, this is just difficult.
Did you experience any sort of feelings of rejection from your birth mum? Did you ever experience anything?
Oh, massive. I have dealt with feelings of rejection my whole life. I go into that when I feel stressed and worried. I think I just can't. There's just that everything's going to fall in. I've done a lot of work on this because everything in my world did fall in, so I feel like everything's just going to cave in and just crumble and I'll be left with absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I understand that.
That's the feeling. Obviously, it's not going to happen, not reality.
No, but that's the feeling.
The feeling is
the floor is
I will be
underneath your feet. If you don't know.
Yeah, but when I've done a lot of work on that through years of therapy, it's because it did happen to me. I was left with nothing.
Yeah.
My world did cave in. My mum, put me in a foster home through no wanting to of her own. So yeah, it's really important to know your attachment pattern. Because also, I think when it comes to positive relationships with others, friendships, romantic relationships, relationships with your parents, relationships with your kids, you need to know where you're coming from. And like Kay said, attachment patterns can be worked on. They can be healed. But as we always say, or I always bleat on, awareness is key. Definitely.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, ladies, we're almost at time. Is there anything else anybody else wants to say about this amazing topic that we could probably chat about for hours?
We could. I just want to say, Karen, I'm really jealous of you having that first memory of your mum taking you to school and what she brought for you when she picked you up. I am so jealous. I don't have access to those memories at all for me.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you both for sharing that because, it's not an easy topic to talk about, is it? But,
it's not. It's not. And I feel like I've opened my heart here about, my relationship with my mother, and maybe in the hopes that somebody can kind of understand a little bit more about their own attachment pattern. Maybe they have an avoidant attachment pattern with somebody in their lives, and to be aware of it and not just to think there's something wrong with you, there's something wrong with them, just to be kind to yourself and understanding to yourself so you can be aware of it and try and work with it. Yeah,
absolutely.
Excellent.
I remain passionate about breaking patterns, and that's why I shared about my attachment style and how it replayed itself with my son particularly, but also in relationships, because that's the only way. If we can check ourselves, then we can say, let's not do this to our children. Let's not treat them like little slaves or little things beyond. Relate to them, break the patterns. Otherwise, I really fear for our future.
Yeah.
So that's my final word.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, again, thank you so much, ladies, for being open-hearted as usual. Listeners, if you want to get hold of us, we have a few different ways that you can get hold of us. Karen or Kay, would you like to do the honours this week about our email, etc.? Insta?
Karen would.
beautifullymelanatedpodcast.com
at Gmail.
No, at gmail.com. No, it's Beautifully Melanated Podcast at gmail.com and at Beautifully Melanated Podcast on Instagram. Okay.
And YouTube, just type in Beautifully Melanated. And we would love to hear from you. I know we say this every week, but honestly, we really, really would love to hear from you. And I have to give a shout out to Laura for the feedback last night. that she found our last episode so useful in her work, in schools, and that the language was accessible enough that she could incorporate it straight away into her working week. So thanks, Laura, for that. Would love to hear from you listeners, please. Send your comments in. If you were an NHS worker particularly, would love to hear your thoughts on where that's going.
Definitely. Right. All right. We will take care. You will take care, hopefully, as well. And we will speak to you next week.
We will do.
Okay, then. Bye.
Bye. Beautifully.